You know, people ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why do you not retire and read books and write fancy academic papers? And I say, yes, that is also important. But what is more important is that I was given an opportunity to read books in the first place, to engage with ideas because of the sacrifices of ordinary people. And so part of scholarship must be given back to the people in the form of public engagement. She myself was a public scholar, what we call an activist scholar or a scholar activist, who's always trying to use the knowledge that is gained from reading books, from observing people in their communities, in their society, and giving them back, in the words of a UC Guyana, giving them back to the people as a political nourishment and by extension, cultural nourishment. That's what I'm about. It's about being that public scholar whose work is not just confined to the classroom, but that classroom is extended to the public space.
Mr. Watts, he is armed himself shots. Shots, watch it, tear gas. Light rounds. Also, I can see that.
But since Mike wasn't there, no, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me.
Right? No, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me now.
You gotta listen to me too, man.
I am listening to
right? Now, I see you on the East Coast. The day when they get a protest of them, the next day, that's when you see one bigger heads come up to talk to my family. Right? And that's bad. If we didn't do a protest, you want to see nobody for justice. You see? I'm not holding back nothing. I'm not holding back nothing. I just need justice of my family.
I get visitors all of a sudden. All of a sudden, you all have visitors.
This is Joker. Who is that Joker? That piece of plum. They know who to deliver to.
Lift your head like me, you got to wear it for with dignity. How it burn out. Black is beautiful. I said, sing it along. Black is beautiful. Say, I'm black and brown. It's high time that we get rid of that old slave mentality.
And a very good evening to you. Good night to some of you. The voice of Kelvin Pope, the mighty Duke. Black is Beautiful, a 1969 hit that won him the Calypso Monarch in Trinidad and Tobago. And to this day, still the Black Power anthem of Calypso. The mighty Duke, Kelvin Pope, Black is Beautiful. and I want to welcome you to this Sunday edition of Politics 101, day three of the incarceration of Tacuma Ogunseye, Guyana's most famous political prisoner. There are other political prisoners. They are out on bail, but they are still prisoners of the state. Some of them cannot travel. Some of them have to deal with the stress of having charges hanging over your heads, from Lowenfield to Myers to December, and the folks at GCOM who were charged, to people like Trevor Ben, who has been relentlessly harassed, Winston Jordan, and of course, Tacuma Ogunseye. Welcome to Politics 101. We are, of course, on the air on the weekend as we keep watch. We keep watch over our country. We keep watch over our country, protecting our fellow citizens who have come under the axe, of the PPP. Welcome to Politics 101. Welcome to Politics 101. We understand that Tacuma Ogunseye will be passed through the court tomorrow at some point. We would like our people to be apprised of that he is likely to be passed through court tomorrow. They are likely to charge him for racial incitement, something about causing public disorder on the Racial Hostility Act. We keep watch. In another hour at 6 o'clock, the WPA will be holding a meeting at Bedford-Wacton BV on the east coast of Demerara. Good evening to all of you who are joining us from across the world, whether you're in Washington, D.C., New York, whether you're in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, or in South Carolina. Welcome to Politics 101. Of course, we have launched the Tacuma Ogunseye WPA Defense Fund, and many of you have already contributed. I know that we have to acknowledge those contributions publicly. Some of you do not want it to be done, but we want to thank all of you, and we shall ensure that we find a way to say thank you. Thank you. For those of you who have not yet made your contribution, please do so. The digits, as they say, are on the screen. The Cash App and the PayPal, the same digits can be used for Zelle. That is used for PayPal. It's on the screen there, dhinds6106@aol.com. Thank you all so much for contributing. Our political prisoners, and we are calling them political prisoners, whether they are incarcerated at the present moment or not. We remember Robin Simon, who was also charged for terrorism a few weeks ago. And so we continue to witness for them. We continue to keep open all these wounds, because they are, of course, wounds. And I say it here tonight, there is life after the PPP. It seems to have gotten to them. Mr. Kit Nascimento went after us and particularly cited my statement that there's life after the PPP. And I'm not telling lies. Of course there's life after the PPP. Many of them, I'm sure, would want the PP people remain in power forever and forever. That is not going to happen. They know it, I know it, we know it. And we have to make sure that those who are collaborating with oppression, those who are defending oppression, those who are protecting oppression, that they know that they, at some point, will have to watch this country in its eyes and apologize because we are not going to forget. We are not going to forget. People who decide that they are going to call Rickford Borg dangerous, Tacuma Ogunseye dangerous, David Hines dangerous. What you do with dangerous men is that you kill them. They are pushing and urging the government to expire us. We will not forget. We will not forget. I just want them to know they are protecting the few. They're protecting the few in the political elite and the economic elite. But when we speak for the many. We speak for the many sufferers, those who suffer in silence, those whose wails are heard miles and miles, thousands of miles away. We speak for them. And so here we are on a Sunday evening. Here we are on a Sunday evening. Good evening to the Bookers from Buxton. Who, I tell the story of Danette going to every APNU rally in 2020. Faceless, nameless, but one of the many. The bedrock of the support, the bedrock of the movement, the bedrock of the party. May never in our lifetime get the thanks that she deserves. So many of you in your hundreds come onto these platforms every night. You could be doing other things, but you come on every night. I want on behalf of all of us to say thanks to you. I say thanks not because you're doing us a favor. I say thanks because you are doing history a favor. I tell journalists these days, don't ask me what I think the people are saying. Come on to these programs and you will see with your own eyes what people are saying. And I know that many of them are on here. I know Barrett Jagdew is a fan of this program. Good evening, Barrett, and welcome to Politics 101. I know Kwame McCoy is a fan of this program. Good evening, and welcome to Politics 101. I hope I make a difference in your lives, and that one day you will see the light and realize that it is a mortal sin to oppress your fellow human beings. It's a mortal sin to play race and then accuse others of racism. It's a mortal sin. And that at some time history will catch up with you. History will catch up with you. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101 on a Sunday evening. Sunday evening is usually a special evening in our culture. It's the evening that you feast on that leftover soup from earlier in the day. Sometimes some of you go to church in the evening. You iron the clothes for the children to go to school on Monday. You start to prepare for the new work week. Sunday evening is an evening of calm and tranquility. That's the way it is. That's the way it was. Young parents take their children for ice cream on a Sunday. And I know in my own village, Buxton, I would be at a gas station sometimes and see young parents, mostly women, but more and more men, bringing their children to sit for ice cream on a Sunday evening. We do that because we are human beings. And I, as a political activist, I've learned so much from watching ordinary people doing their thing, living their normal lives. I watch them as people, not as voters. The dignity with which they carry themselves. Not a lot of money in their pocket. Poor people, but trying to make life easier. And it is those people who inspire me, who inspire Ogunseye to take the stand that he has taken. Because we want to protect that tranquility of a Sunday evening. We want the Sunday evenings of our people to be filled with the grace of God and their own sense of their dignity. I stress the word dignity, because often that's all we have. We don't have riches. We are not millionaires. We are not billionaires. All we have is our dignity. And that dignity has brought us thus far, and we are not going to turn back. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101 on a Sunday evening. You know, one of the things that we've seen over the last couple of days, over the last couple of weeks, is the way in which this regime, the PPP regime, is so quick to come out swinging because they are protecting something. What are they protecting? That thing they're protecting is privilege. Tyrants don't love challenges to their privileges. And we are challenging their privilege. Tyrants armed with weapons of mass destruction. Tyrants armed with the media. Tyrants armed with the powerful. But one word from the powerless, one snarl from the powerless sets them, gets them crazy. What are they hollering about? They say the PNC is weak. They're going to beat the PNC at any election. They say the WPA is defunct. We died in 1980 with Walter Rodney. Why then do they worry about us? Jack Jones said there is a deal between the PNC and the WPA, that the WPA will come out and challenge them on the issue of race. That we have a division of labor. Why are they worrying about us? They worry about us, they know, because they know that something is happening in Guyana. Something is happening with Guyanese, whether they're in Guyana or out of Guyana. They know not the hour We said last night that they are overthrowing themselves, and they know that. We are clearing the way for them so that they can overthrow themselves. We are making it easier for them to overthrow themselves, as they must. Nowhere in the history of the world, nowhere in the history of humanity, oppression lasts forever. The greatest crime against humanity, slavery, it lasted for centuries. But then it came tumbling down. The great British Empire, Winston Churchill says he was not elected to preside over the falling of Her Majesty's empire. But Slinger Francisco, the mighty sparrow, spoke for us when he said, London Bridge is falling down. Those of you of another generation will remember that calypso. London Bridge is falling down. All the great empires have crumbled. Eventually they must crumble. And these in Guyana, who want to hold on to the wealth, you see, they fight for political power so they can have control over the country's economic power. That's what this is all about. They say they want one Guyana, but then they reject sharing power. It's a one Guyana without sharing of economic power. When you say share economic power, they say, no, that's not the one Guyana we believe in. When we say share political power, they say, no, that's not the one Guyana we believe in. The one Guyana we believe in is that we must control the political and economic power, and the rest of you must crawl on your bellies. Good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. One of my nieces called me today and she said, Uncle David, I don't follow Guyanese politics too much. But one of my friends called me and said, Jack Dio is calling your uncle's name every 2 sentences. And I said to her, there is something about politics in which those who think that they're powerful, they're the most fearful people. I don't want Jack Dio to fear me. I am a mere human being, an individual. I want him to fear the hurricane that comes when human beings become furious. And yes, I'm making no bones about it. I want our supporters to be furious, to be furious at a bad government, a nasty government. You see, they've been misquoting Ogunseye. We have the speech of Ogunseye up there. We have transcribed it. We have the words. The lawyers will have to have that. We see Stabrook News saying, oh, Ogunseye say, the team must be ready. We saw the newscast saying Ogunseye says that you have the majority in the army. Why are you complaining? They're going to charge him, and the matter will go to court, and they will have to provide the evidence of what he said. And they will have to juxtapose what he says against what others in the political arena have said. Sisters and brothers, this is a defining moment in our history. There's a reason why they're misquoting Ogunseye. They're taking advantage of the fact that in this era when people's attention span are not as lengthy as they used to be, they're taking advantage of that. A lot of them in the media are quoting what the PPP said, Ogunseye said. And they haven't gone to listen what Ogunseye said. It's amazing. Some of them have been corrected, but they're still not backing down from what they said. What a country the PPP has turned Guyana into. What a country. Where those who are supposed to be the guardians of the truth are genuflecting to one truth. See, I do not like to always complain. I didn't come up in that politics, you know. I come up in the politics to say you complain one time, you complain two times, and the third time, you do something about what you're complaining about. And that is what has driven the WP. And they know that. Jack Dio call it shock therapy. Shock therapy. He got a way of mixing up words and things, you know. So, but we get the drift of what he means. That we have shocked the country into realization that the country is going too far under the PPP. The PPP has gone too far. And if you want to know how far the PPP has gone, listen to what happened over the weekend. The president was in Region 3 on an outreach. And he summoned the press to a press conference, give them an hour and a half. And they showed up at the press conference at the the athletic track that they have there somewhere in Lenora on the west coast there. And he proceeds to give a speech with his supporters cheering. And when the media began to ask questions, his supporters were jeering the media, abusing the media. This man called the media to a press conference when, in effect, it was not a press conference. He called the media there so that his people would abuse the media. You all remember during the 2016 American president's campaign when President Trump would do that to the media. He will tell his people how to abuse the media, and he himself would abuse the media. Well, that's what that man did, the president. The president of the Guyana Press Association complained about it. It was carried in Kaieteur News. Kaieteur News sent 2 reporters, and they were abused. We know the government got a problem with Grenland and Kaieteur News for the exposés that they have been making about what's happening in the oil industry. So the man, as president, decided this is how I'm going to get back at Kaitro News. I'm going to call the reporters here and abuse them. You know, I am a friend of the media. But I think what has happened with the independent media in Guyana, first of all, the private media depend on the government for sustenance because it's government advertisements. Without government advertisements, you can't run a paper in Guyana. That is well known. So they all depend on government for government ads. And so some of them kowtow to the government. Others don't kowtow to the government. But they try to find a way. They give the opposition negative coverage or no coverage to signal to the government we're not on their side. And they walk that tightrope. They walk that tightrope. Jack Dio took away ads from the Stabrook News. Took away ads from the Stabrook News. When Mrs. Jagan said they shouldn't do that and they should restore the ads, Jack Dio told her that she's a private citizen, shut up. And this is the man that was at Babujan singing the praises of Mrs. Jagan. Tells you, shut up, you're a private citizen. Manish. Disrespect his political mother. And people like myself were the ones who had to raise our voices and said, no, you don't do that to the media. Today, the Stabrook News carries not one word from the WPA. I don't bother to send in any letter to them anymore. As you all notice, I don't write much in the newspapers now. Because after 2020, because I did not join the bandwagon to say the PNC rig an election, I became enemy number one. And both the Kaitro News and the Stabrook News would not carry my views. Stabrook News don't carry a word from the WPA. In this recent thing with Ogunseye, they carried all the condemnations of Ogunseye. Not one word from Ogunseye's party. Ogunseye wrote challenging an editorial that the Stabrook News carried. They have not carried Ogunseye's response to their editorial. There is a viciousness from the Stabrook News. Kit Nascimento didn't like when I told the Stabrook News there's life after the PPP. And let me explain to them what I mean. After what this government is doing to opposition supporters, it is only human that when this government changes and the now opposition becomes the government, their supporters are going to pressure them to seek revenge. That's human. When you push people to the extent to which the PPP is pushing them, when they get power, they're going to seek revenge. The last time, Granger came under a lot of pressure because they came in the coalition government. They spent a lot of money on audits, and they found a lot of evidence of corruption. But they didn't prosecute. They had evidence, and they didn't prosecute. The PPP leaders, they didn't. And a lot of their supporters were angry at them. The PPP comes back to power. It has no evidence against government ministers, and it prosecutes them. Do you believe that when the PPP loses power and the opposition comes back to office, that opposition supporters would tolerate a repeat of what the Granger administration did? No, They're going to want revenge. And so when I tell them life after the PPP, they think I'm threatening them. I'm not threatening them. Who am I to threaten them? The logic of what they're doing now will make life after the PPP difficult for them. Stabroek News, which came into being as a result of the struggles of people like David Hinds. It is we who struggled, went to jail. Some of us lost our lives to break down the walls of oppression so that a private newspaper, the Stabroek News, could be born, and later on the Kaitro News. And today, David Hinds is persona non grata in the Stabroek News, and to some extent the Kaitro News. My struggles, our struggles, made it possible for the people. There was a time when there were no private papers in Guyana. And it is we who broke down the walls of oppression that made it possible for them. Ungrateful. And they're ungrateful because they think that they are superior to the rest of Guyana. There is an inherent anti-Black racism that's there in the elites of this country. It's there in the brown elite, the half-white elite, and sections of the Black elite. There's one thing about oppression, it's always multiracial. The main oppressor always brings in allies from the group that it's oppressing. We in the Black community call them Uncle Toms. Booker T. Washington was always welcome in the White House at a particular time in our history. That's why African Americans see him as an Uncle Tom. He told African Americans, let down your bucket where you are, accept your second-class citizens, go learn trade, don't worry with university. Thank God for W.E.B. Du Bois, who said we should do both. And one Indianist, Ravidev, dared to suggest to Black people they must follow the Booker T. Washington school of thought. And I was so insulted by Ravidev, and I told him to his face. Told him to his face. But it is that latent anti-Black racism. It's there in the society. Slavery, colonial society was built on that anti-Black racism. The notion that Black people are culturally and humanly inferior. And there comes a time when nobody has to say it. Even we Black people sometimes play into it. Girl, you get nice here. I notice some of our sisters today are back into that nonsense. They're wearing blonde wigs. They don't realize how much we fought for Black hair. An important aspect of identity for Black hair to be normal. Up until the 1990s, Black women were still thrown out of their jobs for wearing braids. Sometimes we have to remind our people There is that anti-black racism in Guyana. It comes out. You don't see the PPP going into Amerindian areas and chasing down Amerindian people to give them a couple of pennies and invite them to Babu Jan. They don't do that to Amerindians. They go after Amerindian votes, yes. But they don't go looking for Amerindians to use them as ornaments. They don't go to Indians and look for them to carry them to Babu Jan to make them ornaments. They look for black people. The saying among a section of our population today is that the cheapest thing to buy is a black man. The cheapest thing. You go to the market, the goods are very expensive. A black man is cheaper than a couple of pounds of shell out now in Guyana. That's what the PPP is saying. And we black people cannot be comfortable with that. We cannot be happy with that. It's a sin for us to be happy with it. That is the racism I'm talking about. Jack Dio don't boast about how many Indian members he has in the party. He don't boast about that. Because he doesn't have to pay a dime to bribe them. But he feels our people are bribable. They're cheap. And we cannot be comfortable with that. Ultimate, that cheap black man is going to turn on them. We know that. They don't know that. We know that. That cheap black man is going to bite them. And when they're bitten, they will blame Ogunseye. They will blame David Hinds. They will blame Aubrey Norton. They will blame Rickford Burke and Ben Shop and Duncan. They're overthrowing themselves because they lack human dignity. There must be a place you stop. There must be a place that you say, stop by, I can't go this far. You got them banner David Hinds and them banner going to see what we're doing. But instead of doing that, they press forward disrespecting black people. And they figure that all they have to do is to call David Hinds and others and Rickford Burke racist. I challenge them. Always challenge them. I know what racism is. I'm a product and a victim of racism. Racism has to do with prejudice, where you believe that your skin color makes you superior to others. David Hinds has always fought for racial equality, not racial superiority. And then the second aspect of racism is when you have power and you use your power to activate your prejudices. It becomes racism. I don't think Jack Dio cares about what the definition of racism is. I don't think Irfan Ali is capable of understanding the definition of racism. With no respect to the brother, you know. Some of us are slow. Some of us are late learners. Perhaps Irfan is a late learner. But he doesn't understand the concept of race. Yet he stands up on that thing and said, we said, we are going to kill racism. Your God, racism been around now for 400 years and nobody can kill it yet. But you gonna kill it. Such a buffoon. And you hear Jack Dio with it too. They're going to wipe out racism. Here is how they're going to wipe out racism. They're going to jail every black voice that says you can't take advantage of our people. They figure that's how they're going to wipe out racism. They're going to go to Buxton and give them a couple of forks and shovels and get them to smile. And that's how they will wipe out racism. They will wipe out racism, according to them, by giving a little crumbs to some gullible black people and by jailing and murdering those who are not gullible. That's how they intend to wipe out racism. As backward as it sounds, that's their agenda. You see, if they get Rickford Burke out of the way, or Mark Bishop or Aubrey Norton out of the way, they can go to every black village and give them some fork and some shovel and tell them that's development. So the jailing of the leaders and the bribing of the followers go hand in hand. That's their plan. And they're mad, they're angry because some of us have seen through the plan. But more than that, we are doing something to stop it. They've now attacked Red Thread. For those of you who don't know Red Thread is an organization, a women's organization that has been around since the late 1980s. It was started by some WPA women who took the position that women should organize outside of party politics. A lot of them are still WPA members, but they took a conscious decision that women should organize outside of party politics. And they formed Red Thread. And they've been doing work among women. Many of them have since retired from party politics and put their energies into politics of gender justice and social justice. But Dr. Randolph Prasad, decided he was going to tell Guyana that these women are WPA women, Red Thread. These women are WPA women. They're not grassroots women. I know those women who signed that letter. And they're saying they're not grassroots. I know those women. The majority of them are poor, ordinary women. But in order to make their point, they're saying those women are elite women. I know those women. So they're deliberately doing these things. They know that there is an anti-elite sentiment for good reason among working people. And so everybody becomes an elite. You ever heard the talk about the mulatto elite? Freddie Kissoon leads it and others follow it. And I always laugh. Because when it comes to Guyana, they can't call me a mulatto redskin elite. When they come to me, they can't call me a mulatto redskin elite, or Clive Thomas, whose mother and father, or Walter Rodney, or Maurice Odell, or Moses Bagwan. We didn't come from the elite. The WPA is an elite organization. The only thing wrong with it was to read books and became PhDs. But becoming a PhD don't make you some social elite. I speak the same way that I have always spoken. My mouth don't rung up. But when they put us into the elite, they tried to separate us from people. The PPP is fighting for its life, but the life is the money, the billions of barrels of oil. That's what they're fighting for. And they understand that if you enrich one section of the population for the next 15 years, and by the same token, you pauperize another section of the population, that at the end of that process, one section of the population would be empowered and the other section will be disempowered. They understand that. And when you have that, I mean, in the United States of America, for example, when Obama took office, the average white family, the wealth of the average white family was 8 times that of the wealth of the average black family. Today, it's 13 times. You see, if you have a wealth gap and you do nothing to close that gap, the gap continues to widen. If you give me 10 cents and I'm earning as a family 1/8 of what you give the other side, you give them 10 cents, you give me 10 cents. Even if you do that, you're not closing the gap. You're maintaining the gap. But if you give them $1 and you give me 10 cents, and you go around the place boasting, look what I give you. You didn't have 10 cents before. I am giving you 10 cents, but you're giving the others $1. And they already were 8 times in front of me. You are continuing to widen that gap. And that is what is happening in the United States of America. Before Obama took power, the average black family, their wealth was 1/8 of white wealth. Today is 1/13. Or put another way, white wealth is 13 times of black wealth. And that's what's happening in Guyana. Those who own capital, those who have generational wealth, are able to take advantage of the oil economy. I heard Jack Dio saying it. I didn't give it to the foreigners. I wanted to give it to people like Glenn Lal to get rich. If he thinks he will get rich. Local content is a scam. It's a scam to take some of the profits from the foreigners and give it to local allies of the foreigners. And the PPP is clear about what it's doing. They're not transferring wealth to the poor. And now we come to the working class. Because I notice our Indian comrades on our side are getting tangled in talking about class politics and race and class. The PPP started a training school. They've started it already on the quarantine. And they're going to take formerly sugar workers, laborers in the sugar industry, and they're going to train them in other skilled areas to take advantage of the oil economy. What are they doing? What are they doing? They are, in fact, creating opportunities for formerly mostly East Indian sugar workers to give them opportunity to break out of poverty. Whether they will break out of poverty is another story, but they're giving them opportunities. And before they give them these opportunities, they give them a small piece, $250,000 on top of the benefits that they got. Contrast that to what they do at Linden. They say they give 1,000 Lindeners those part-time $40, $40,000 job. Is that the same opportunity? You give one side $250,000 and then you're training them for the opportunities that are likely to come in the oil industry. You go to Linden, no training to upgrade their skills. No $250,000, you give them a $40,000 job. You say, and it will be $2 billion in their pocket. Now you take all the money and make it look as though it's $2 billion you give them. And it will circulate in the economy. Of course it will circulate in the economy, but that money is going back to your friends. When you give those people those $40,000, it don't circulate in Linden or wherever. It goes back to your friends. So there's a way in which they're manipulating the economy. And working class Indians, they have a feeding trough at the bottom for working class people. And they put working class Indians at the top of that trough. And they put Amerindian and black people, working class people, at the bottom of the trough. So if you have a feeding trough and you put the poor of one ethnic group at the top, so they're going to get the first drippings that coming down, what do you think they're doing to the ones at the bottom? They're kicking them down. And so our brothers and sisters who are talking about race and class have to be careful. I hope some of them are listening to me tonight. The PPP is not intentionally oppressing Indian people. That would be suicidal. They're not. And our Indian brothers and sisters must not give that impression. They are going to go after a few Indian activists who are on the opposition side. Political harassment. I'm not saying political harassment is not serious. Political harassment could lead to your death. But for the vast number of Indian working class people, the PPP is not foolish to intentionally oppress those people. Those people are oppressed because the very nature of the political economy oppresses the poor. So at a structural level, they're victims. But at the political level, the party moves to make some peace with them. It puts people in marches and tell those people, go and lick down those people at Monrepo. And then the president goes in and he gives the people at Monrepo some money. And the lady know well, she said, me Pilauri cross $5,000. Or not $5,000. You all know what I mean. $5 million, whatever she called. And we cannot know how much money they give to those people. Because there was no due diligence. The president is not supposed to spend money like that. We don't know how much money they give to those people. So yes, Indian people are structurally oppressed, just like black people and Amerindian people. Good. But the party in power makes some minor redress to Indians. And that is using the budget and using these political incidents as a means of giving Indian people a little small piece under the table. But black people, they don't give them not under the table. They give them a little small piece over the table. And our Indian brothers and sisters on our side have to spend some time studying class and race. You can't look at us and say, well, you know, Indian people are suffering because of their race. Indian people are suffering because of the structural nature of our economy. That 48% poverty, Indian people are included in it. They're poor Indian people, poor black people, poor Amerindian people. And that's as a result of how the structure of the economy is. But then once you go beyond that and you look where they're located, a lot of black people are located in the civil service. Civil service. They never pay civil service a lot of money because they say it's going to cost all kind of turmoil in the economy, inflation. So they're never going to pay civil servants big. But the civil servants are the ones who keep the government coffers going. Because the government don't have to run being a civil servant, a teacher, a nurse, a government worker. They don't have to run behind them for taxes. The government takes out the taxes from them because they're working for the government. They are the most loyal taxpayers. They can't dodge the tax man. So their salary low and they got to pay taxes. The average rice farmer doesn't necessarily have to pay a tax. The average rice farmer can dodge taxes. And I'm reliably informed that they do. They don't have to pay taxes. So once you peel away the skin from the onion, you're beginning to understand how, despite the fact that all ethnic groups are victims of a political economy that is meant to oppress the poor, that the black poor, because of a historic anti-black racism, and because they don't vote for the PPP, and because of where they're located in the political economy, they are institutionally getting the worst end of the stick. And I hope some of our young Indian on our side brothers and sisters are listening to me. When I was a political activist in my 20s and 30s, I had to go to party school. And Clive Thomas and Guyana and Rupnarayan and Moses and Walter Rodney and them had to be teaching us like I'm teaching here tonight. The delicate divide between race and class. You know Moses Bagwan, who was one of the founders of the WPA, Indian brother, still around. He has a letter in today's newspaper. Rafi Dev and them used to be mad at Moses Bagwan. Because Moses Bagwan argued in the 70s, what I'm arguing here tonight, that all ethnic groups are oppressed, but black people are oppressed differently. So what I'm saying is not anything new. Moses Bagwan, an Indian, he made that argument. I heard Mr. Rupnarayan, his last name is his first name is escaping me. He was on Globespan, and he was asked about Ogunseye's statement, and he started. He said, for me to analyze what Ogunseye said, I have to start with where contracts are going. And the vast majority of contracts go to Indians. And he begins to analyze from there. So he doesn't start with what Ogunseye says. He starts with the circumstances in which Ogunseye is speaking. And there were two black brothers. One of them, I think, is a good brother. They got caught. One started with Ogunseye saying Ogunseye is not a contractor, so Ogunseye should not talk about black contract. Nonsensical. The other one started that Guyana is a democracy, and if there is a democracy, Ogunseye should not say what he says. Both of them chose not to start with the reality out of which Ogunseye's sentiments and message came. But the Indian man got it. One may argue that as an Indian man, he doesn't have to fear being killed if he said that. The other two brothers may fear that if they were to say that, they would be singled out as racist. And I know that is what went through their minds. They can't call the Indian man racist. And the other two black men, because of our inherent fear of being called racist, we always try to be fair. We always try to be fair when the other side is so unfair. And so this is where we are. They have not an iota of evidence against Ogunseye. I hope I'm called. I hope I'm called as a witness. I was an expert witness for Freddie Kissoon when he called Jagdeo an ideological racist, meaning that Jagdeo, under Jagdeo's presidency, he perpetuated a structural and institutional racism. And Freddie said that that structure and that race, that structural racism and institutional racism is grounded in a particular ideology. And he's right. He is right, was right. And I appeared in that case on behalf of Freddie as an expert witness on race, and I was cross-examined by the great Bernard DeSantis. And DeSantis said something to me after the cross-examination, and somebody said to me, they never saw DeSantis so restrained in cross-examination. And I wouldn't say what DeSantis said to me. So I'm making a point to say I'm qualified to give expert testimony on race. I studied it, and I've been teaching it for decades. I know what racism is. I know how race operates. I studied it. And you are charging Ogunseye with things. So they're not going to get off with this. Put it in the court, we're going to fight it there. And then we're going to fight it right here in the public. Wanted bulletin for the 4 top government officials: Ali, Jagdeo, Robeson-Ben, Nandlal. We've already put out a wanted bulletin for them. At some point, we will arrest them and we will bring them and we will try their case right here on these platforms in the full glare of the public. Thank you all very much. It's 6 o'clock and past 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, sorry. And I think the WPA people are ready to start their meeting at BV. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I know it's a Sunday night and you could be doing anything. Thank you all very much. And I hope that we have been able to bring ourselves 1 inch closer to where we ought to be. Please, the Tacuma Ogunseye WPA Defense Fund, Legal Defense Fund is there. Please subscribe to it as generously as you can. Support us. The Cash App handle is there, the PayPal and Zelle handles are there. To those of you who have already contributed, many thanks, and we'll find a way to say thanks to you privately. But publicly, I want to say thanks to all of us. Tomorrow morning, We are expecting that Brother Tacuma would be passed through courts, those of you in the Georgetown area. We don't have all the information as to which court, what time, but please stay tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time, Brother Kidaki show. The information will be given out as we get it tomorrow morning. So please tune in to the show. We have already gotten, I think Mark Benchop has been circulating some intelligence that he got from the office of the president stating what the charge is, but they didn't say what time they're going to pass him through the court. But we are going to keep you informed. The Bostonian Morning Time tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, and we are going to get you the information there. Those of you who are available, the WPA meeting is starting now, and CAMS TV is carrying it live. Thank you all so much for staying with me for the last hour. I have already given my speech for the meeting, so go now and listen to the speeches of the other speakers. So the meetings really started at 5 o'clock, my own contribution. Thanks you all so much. Thank you all so much, and see you tomorrow night.